Welcome to Everything's Not Black and White with your hosts, Lala and Brian.
Going somewhere or going nowhere. Hate is a shortcut. Love is the long way. But it is the only road that will actually get you anywhere. Go the distance, beloved. That was a beautiful poem by American activist and poet Cleo Wade. And that is how we wanted to start the show today. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. We have a good one today. Let me tell you, we have one of my dear friends, fellow Aries, making it happen, rebel with many causes.
Too many causes.
My girl, Miss Kierra Williams. What's up?
Hey, Kierra.
Hey.
Good to see you, my friend.
It is so good to be here with both of you.
Well, we are excited to talk today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are in the middle of the end of an election, let's hope, where there's been definitely some challenges around conceding and presidential elect and a whole lot of things happening in the country. And it's honestly indicative of what has been happening really over the last 4 years. This year, 2020, has been a very challenging year with the pandemic, with work from home, with quarantine, with social and racial uprisings and unrest, and this political season. A lot of things that people would say can cause rifts and divisions where people feel a whole lot more pressure to hate than to love. And so what we're talking about today with this episode is, what does it mean to choose love? Yeah. So we're excited to have Kierra here because she's my good friend. I've known her probably close to 10 years now, hasn't it been?
Yeah.
It's about 10 years now. So we used to work together a long time ago. And I always thought how amazing she was. She liked to say that I was a mentor to her, but she was also a mentor to me, because I always loved her style and just who she was and what she brought to the table. So, Kierra, hello.
Hello. You're so kind. I have to tell the audience a quick story about how La and I met each other. I knew La's voice and her laughter before I ever met her in person, which I actually love. Because every time, so we were in the same office, but we had a copy room and a wooden door that separated our cubicles. And every once in a while I was in the middle of the rhythm of my day, I would hear this eruption of laughter and this like really loud laugh. And every time I heard it, it always came right on time. And it's the most infectious laugh that when you hear it, you just laugh with it. Aww. And it's just like this great. And so then when I finally met La, I think I needed her for like a Bring Your Child to Work Day.
Yes, that's right.
Like ideas. And then I heard her laugh in the meeting, and I couldn't even concentrate during the meeting because I just finally was able to place the person with the laugh. And I will always remember you that way. Aww. Of seeing, and because I think that's really powerful, like your laughter and like people being able to hear and see your joy before they ever see who it is. Like, I think that's really powerful. Aww. I will always remember that about you. So,
thank you.
I mean, almost 10 years now, which is crazy.
That is so crazy.
I think it's so interesting because when we're at the store or something and we get on different paths, I don't have to look for her because all I have to do is listen and I'll find that laughter, just like what you're saying, because it's something she's so well known for.
I think that is so powerful, and it reminds me of the woman who raised me in a different way. So one of the women that raised me, so I was raised by my grandmother and my great aunts, and one of my great aunts, my Aunt Patty, she had that laugh that you could see before you could hear.
Love it.
It was this bouncy laugh. Like, she would silently start bouncing, and then you would hear her laughter, and she would just erupt into this laughter. And it's one of those things that brings me joy to think about. And so I will always think of joy when I think of your name, because I'll always remember that laughter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love that. So I thank you for sharing that. And I love hearing your story and you talking about joy and love from a young age. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about how you were surrounded, how you felt love when you were younger, and how you grew up.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And I know we had a conversation before this that when people hear through some of the trials and tribulations that I've been through, I think they center on that. And something that I've started to do as an adult and really into my 30s, I've started to think about like, yeah, but I knew joy way sooner than I knew pain. But I didn't know what it was until I went through the full cycle of seeing joy, seeing pain, seeing joy again, seeing pain again. I've had to experience that cycle of joy and pain many times in my life before I could go back and look at it and really appreciate the first moments of joy and love in my life. And obviously, I think when I look back on my life, I think the first joy that I remember is the joy of my sisters. And, we grew up, we had a kind of turbulent beginning of, we had young parents who were not prepared to be parents, who had kids very young.
As are most parents.
Yeah. We were born into a cycle of, my mom was an orphan and my dad, didn't have his dad. And so I think when we think about all of the things that don't quite set you up, no one's prepared for it. And then there are those who are really not prepared from a systemic and from a social aspect. But my sisters were my like protectors. I was like their little baby doll. And really we're not too far apart in age, but I just remembered like braiding hair and like the things that brought us joy of like almost burning the house down with like using the hot iron and the pressing comb from the stove to like try to like straighten and curl our baby doll's hair.
Yes, girl.
That's what brings you joy. Wow, that's be a scary place.
I mean, yeah, like, but those are the things that bring me joy, just like that love, and then obviously the love of my grandmother and her sisters to raise us. Before they passed, they all kind of took turns. My grandmother had us; she passed away. We all went into foster care for a while, but I think that love enough for someone else's children, or their children, to take them into your home and to give them a place to live and to love them. And my Aunt Josephine was one of the first people to tell me how beautiful and smart I was. And I was thinking about this the other day because she used to collect dolls, and we didn't have a lot of money. Like, we grew up in the projects. We were incredibly financially poor in terms of not having money, but there were certain things that we had that really bring me a lot of joy to think about. And so one of her prized possessions, my Aunt Josephine, was this rocking chair that she had in her room, and she would always give all of us our time. Like, whether it was 20 minutes, like each kid, she would give their time, and we'd go into her room and I would grease her scalp, which, if you know. If you know, you know.
You might have to enlighten some of our listeners what that means.
There was like a trade-off. So my aunt was a Black woman who had 4C hair, right? And so one of our bonding moments was I would take the comb, and I would part down her hair, and like in her scalp where it was dry, I would rub grease in between the little parts to just make sure her scalp was moisturized. And that was our moment. So, I'd sit on her shoulders literally while I was greasing her scalp. And then afterwards, she would rock me in her chair, and she had these baby dolls that she collected. And while she was brushing my hair, I would brush the little baby doll's hair. And it felt like all night to me. Like, it was just our time. But it was probably like maybe an hour of the day that she would give us. And I would say that's the earliest memories of joy and love that I've felt.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it feels like even I can feel the joy from you as you recall that story.
Yeah.
Which is really, really great. And, I love that you're talking about, being through certain challenges in life and going back to the source of love that you felt first and trying to recapture that to help you get through those challenges, I think one of the things that's interesting, and I'd love your take on it, and we've talked about it in the past for our audience, you think about people right now in the world, especially in the business world, and you think about people who they say, oh, they pulled themselves up by their bootstrap and they went through a lot of challenges and that made them strong, and now they're in this corporate world and they're really go-getters, and it's all that adversity that made them strong. I think it's interesting because you come from a different perspective about that. So tell our audience a little bit about what you think about those things.
I've always been really apprehensive of leading with my story of, in some ways, what some would consider disadvantage, and leading through kind of here are the obstacles you've been through, and see Kierra she pulled herself from her bootstraps, because I think that's a dangerous narrative for a lot of reasons. It's a slippery slope for me, because yes, I did go through a lot in my life, But that's not where my journey started. And I think it's a lot of times, regardless of the journey that we're on, I think if you only credit and you kind of canonize and glorify the struggle, it makes it harder for those who are in the struggle, I think, to ever move past it. And again, I think I believe in the law of rhythm and the law of polarity. And I think we're in constant perpetual motion in terms of cause and effect, right? And so you might have times where, yeah, this is a tough part of your life that you're going through. Yeah. But if you canonize that and glorify it, and that's the thing that we attribute to your success and your ability to make it, are you really incentivized to look at something different or to look for the light? And I think recently, I think for me, it's felt like this glorification of the struggle. Yeah. And again, it's a slippery slope, because on one hand, I feel, yeah, we should give credit to like understanding it wasn't easy. But I think the weight that we give that, and again, that canonization of like, now we create these saints and women and people who have to work harder to get there.
Yeah. And there's something about that feels like almost like a less than. Like even at a time when you go through the struggle and then you feel like you want to let your guard down a little bit and it's like, I just need to do this. No, you can't, because now people expect you to pummel through all the hardships. Like you can't even take time to mourn or be sad or to deal with something because you just got to be strong and you got to keep pushing through instead of being able to just kind of say, I need a moment to get through this. Yeah.
There's a balance that we have to find, right? Where, and how do we find it is the question, because I don't know yet how we find it. I just feel like, how do we find that balance of understanding that there was a lot of work that it took for us to get there, and normalizing not having to go through that struggle and still finding yourself in the same place. And again, not to get too political, because I know we have some thoughts around what's going on right now, though, is very political in our country. I look at Stacey Abrams and I look at, yes, give her flowers. Yeah. She experienced something that she didn't want anyone else coming after her to experience. And she was willing to sacrifice any individual gain on her part in terms of her wanting to solve for voter suppression in the state of Georgia. And I also look at that and think, here we have another Black woman in our country who we canonize because of the things she wasn't able, what she had to fight for. And so there's this balance of giving her flowers and recognizing she fought for that. And also, when will she be the last one that we have to create a martyr out of? Right. Like, how do we change the narrative and shift the narrative to where it's okay? Like, when will we ever solve it? Yeah. And I think again, I don't have the answer to that. I throw that out there as we've gotten really accustomed to fighting. Yeah. That sometimes I wonder, being a Black woman, being a Black Indigenous woman, do we know what it's like to not have to? Have we seen how will we get to the other side and see what it's like to not have to fight as hard? And it's again, give her flowers. Yeah. She deserves them. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of her, she has a wonderful documentary on Amazon right now. You can click on the link in the feed here and I'll take you right to it. And I highly recommend watching that.
Yeah. It's called All In, the Vote for Democracy. And it is powerful. Yeah. It is powerful. I love that we're having this conversation. You're talking about the fight. And I've often said to Brian many days, like, I'm just tired of fighting. Yeah. I mean, I've said it so many times. Like, I just wish I could just be fully myself without fighting to be myself. Yeah. You know? And I think one of the interesting things about myself, and people who know me, they know I do love hard and I hug people. And when it's not COVID times, I hug people. But I also say I love you to people literally every day. My direct reports, they hear it from me every day. And my coworkers, they hear it. When I sign off from people, I say, I love you all. I'll talk to you soon. To even in like our all staff meetings, I say it. And I think it's a weird thing, I think, for people to hear you say you love somebody in a business setting. And you frequently can hear, I hate this, or I hate this person, or I hate this thing. But it's really rare sometimes to hear I love you or love mentioned. Why do you think that is?
I love that question. I don't know exactly why it is, except that love makes people feel really uncomfortable at work. And partially I kind of feel like because we've been taught for so long, and that's why I'm excited about where we are in the world right now, because we've been taught for so long that you put this facade on, and professionalism and how it's been defined is a far cry from how you would show up at home and with your family, right? But here we are in 2020 in the middle of a global pandemic where you couldn't get closer to being into someone's home unless you were there.
Right.
Where our homes have become our offices. And so we see children and dogs and spouses making cameos. And so it's a little harder in terms of that, hey, this is what professionalism looks like, to separate who you are from home and who you are at work. Yeah. And the question that I have is, why did we do that for so long? I tell my team members I love them too. And again, you have to be really careful. And I'm in HR, right? So I understand.
So
like when we talk about love, it's not that creepy love that makes you call HR, right? It's not. But it's that, like, what is love? It's that compassion. It's that like desire to want people to succeed and to want the best for someone, to understand them, to give them more grace because you love them. And I think it's something that, and in the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of provocative podcasts and TED Talks, and leaders are kind of starting to embark on this new frontier of what leadership looks like and inspirational leadership. And so you see TED Talks about radical candor. You see TED Talks where leaders are challenging themselves to bring the human back to work. And when I look at all of that, I'm like, yeah, that's love. Being able to be honest with someone in the spirit of correcting them and guiding them and wanting them to do better, that's love. Yeah. So let's just call it what it is. And I think that my favorite mantra is do everything with love. And I think if you ask yourself, what does love look like in this moment? What would doing this with love look like? I think it changes what you would do. Yeah. And then the question is, if you're not, then what are you leading with? If you're not leading with love, how are you leading?
Right. I think that's where the challenge, I think, even for me, that I'm a self-professed lover. I'm a lover, not a fighter, like Michael Jackson says in his song with Paul McCartney, "The Girl Is Mine." That's a reference. Brian can put a link to the video because I love that. But I think part of what I'm feeling challenged about is, it is extremely easy to love somebody when they're lovable and they want to love you back. It is extremely hard to love somebody when they, quote unquote, don't deserve it, or they hate you and they give you some, evil back. Yeah. How do you choose love when it's not coming back at you?
Yeah. So then now we're talking about, for me, what my definition of love is, and it's changed over time. And a lot of times we see this push and this need for reciprocity with love. And I don't look at love that way. I look at love as being, in its definition, unrequited. So when I look at it that way, it doesn't change how hard or how easy it is for me to love someone. They may not always be in a position to receive it. Or understand it. But how it flows for me doesn't change because of how someone else is. And I think that I haven't always been that way. I was very much, for a long time, like, if I give you this love, I expect the love in return. And if you don't give it back to me, then, like, screw you. Right. Like, I'm not going to give you any love anymore. And it took a lot of time. And I had to realize, too, I was born into a Christian household, raised a Jehovah's Witness for some time, raised in a Baptist church for some time, went to a non-denominational Christian church for some time, and developed this love. I had a Muslim really good friend growing up in high school, and I developed this love for religion and studying religion. And I picked up Buddhism, and I started just studying Tibetan Buddhism, And one of the noble truths in Buddhism is, you know, the root of all suffering is attachment. And I really studied that and thought deeply about what that meant for me in regards to love. And I started thinking, my ego is what has been telling me that if I give love, I need to give it back. But that also means for me, in my definition of love, that I haven't actually been giving love. I've been giving incentive for someone to attach themselves back to me the way that I felt I was attaching myself to them.
Interesting.
And when I chose that attachment to a person and they didn't love me, in quotations, back, that feeling of rejection or like that you don't love me, it hurts more.
Yeah.
But if I can give my love unrequited and how I show up with how does love look like for me, I don't attach that to needing something back from you. And so in a way, it also removes that feeling of suffering for me. It's freeing, actually, for me to say, I'm going to show up in love no matter what. This is my way because I'm actually protecting myself. Because the love that I have that's flowing for me has nothing to do actually with what you're giving me. Like it's coming from the peace I have within. And it took a long time to get there.
Yeah, that's powerful. I mean, I love the thought of that. I'm not there. I'm going to tell y'all, audience, I'm not there.
Now, in all fairness, she did say it took her a while to get there.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I'm fascinated by it. And I want to be there. I know, like I said, I can very easily love people who return love, but I have to figure out what it is that I'm going to be regardless of whatever somebody else is back to me.
Yeah.
It's been especially tough in this political climate to reciprocate that or live life in the manner you're talking. It's been so challenging.
Yeah. So I commend you, and I love that you're there, and I love that you had to fight to be there.
Yeah.
Talking about fighting, but I'm glad that you're there because I think you can inspire other people to dig deep and think about where they're at. You know, and people are probably at different places on the spectrum.
100%.
You know, for where you are, and I think it's interesting to look deeper to figure out where you want to be with that. Yeah.
I think the thing that I would clarify too is that this love and this optimism that I have, it's not this Pollyanna like clueless about what's going on about me and around me type of love. My love is more so a product of having to reach a crossroads of because I'm an empath and I feel very deeply.
Yes.
And I experience emotions and I put things together and try to think through the impact that actions that other people have and my own actions have. And because I feel deeply and I understand deeply on a large scale, for me, where I am has also been a form of self-preservation. For my own, of myself.
Sure.
Because I did reach a crossroads. Actually, the crossroads that I came to actually was around the time of Trayvon Martin. And I have 2 young Black brothers, and I have several Black cousins, a Black father in my life. And I remember being so deeply angry that it consumed me to the point where I couldn't really see the light that was inside of me. And I had to have a conversation with myself, like being Pollyanna. And there are certainly a lot of people in the world and in our country who have this Pollyanna positivity that if we just forget it and start anew, we'll be okay viewpoint. And then we have the other end of the spectrum where we're so consumed with hatred that we can't see a way forward. And for me, I had to find the center and balance of feeling both of those emotions very deeply. And figuring out where I was going to go based off of, I don't want to be consumed by anger. But I have seen love, and I have seen the power of that love. I didn't start angry. How do I get back to that? And because I've experienced it before, I know that there's a way back to it, and I had to find my way back to it. But it's not a Pollyanna, everything is roses, and everyone wakes up and shoots like unicorn like stars and rainbows like from their head, like it's not that at all.
But it takes a lot of self-reflection and going deep into yourself to figure out where you need to be with that. I love that. Well, you are incredibly inspirational. You always have been, and you continue to be, and we are so honored and privileged to have you on our show.
Oh,
So
thanks for
thank you
having
for
me.
that.
Thank
so
you.
if our listeners want to get in touch with you or follow you, like how can they do that?
Yeah, so I wasn't going to say this at the beginning, but I'll say it now because I do believe in balance. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn if you want to find me to network from a professional perspective. My name is Kierra Williams, Kierra Williams. But I am on Instagram. My handle is at balance_is_key, KI. Underscore. I think there's an underscore after that too.
Well, we will definitely link it into the podcast notes
Awesome.
so people can get in touch with you. We're really excited. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. With both of you ladies running the show today, it's been a really easy project for me. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that too.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was gonna be longer. I was like waiting for more questions. We should do a redo and like ask more questions.
We can always do a part 2.
Can we do a part 2?
Of course we can do a part 2. We can do a part 2. And we'd love for listeners to be in touch with us as well.
At enbwpodcast@gmail.com.
That's right. So please like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate all of you listening. Thank you for joining us again. And that is the show for today. And we will see y'all again later. Take care.
Bye.